But the other part that I found fascinating about your piece, and it touches on this in terms of the Supreme Court justices, is his job in keeping these Supreme Court justices happy. Because the way that we ultimately dealt with the court packing that didn't happen under FDR, my understanding was to increase, or maybe this happened prior, increase the pensions of judges to get them to retire, because they could retire and enjoy like a good pension. And now if you're a judge, you could leave and make a ton of cash. And you address that. Will you talk about that part of it? Because it starts to make sense why Leonard Leo is so deeply involved in making Ginny Thomas so incredibly wealthy and engaged in things. Why having, Harlan Crow come and pay for my mom's house and my kids' private school, why that is so important.
It was the big question hanging over all of the great Supreme Court corruption reporting we've been doing this year. We've got the receipts on the house. We've got the receipts on the yacht trips, the photos with Leo and Kroll and Thomas and all of those folks in the Adirondacks. But the thing we couldn't put our finger on was why? Why are you doing this? Why are the justices, some of them, so brazen about this? And also just milking it in, just how many trips can they go on? How many perks can they accept? Gifts can they rake in? And, I was talking to, of all people, George Conway, the never Trump activist guy now, but someone who people forget until about 2015 was very much a card-carrying Federalist Society member, donor, advisor. I mean, this was his world until it wasn't. And what he told me and what other people subsequently told me was that these justices, Thomas, Alito, Scalia, RIP, they even though they have some of the most powerful jobs in the world, they still see themselves as victims, as targets, as unfairly maligned by the media and the mass culture, whatever, Washington. They also don't feel like they get paid enough for those incredibly powerful jobs. So, there are a lot of feelings for these justices, apparently. And there was a real fear that a Scalia or a Thomas would say, you know what, I don't make enough money for how influential I am. All of these people are mean to me when I go out to dinner with Ginny or whatever. Screw this. I'm out. I'm done with this job, even though the power that comes with it is so vast. I'm going to go work at some big law firm and make a ton of money, and I'll have my own house in the Adirondacks or the Indonesia or whatever. And so what Leo did was as Conway described him as a quote unquote den mother to these justices rather. He made sure that they felt loved and that they felt, doted upon by these wealthy individuals who, of course, they like these judges. They want to support them. They want them, to feel loved too. And so Leo played this connector kind of role, this consigliere type almost behind the scenes, where he would have these private dinners and the justices would be invited. And some wealthy donors would be invited. It's the same kinds of donors. And some Federalist Society people would be invited, including George Conway, who actually went to these dinners and saw how all this sausage got made. And that helped keep these justices happy. It helped them.
It's like they bring them there and it's like, hey, here are these billionaires across one side of the table. Here are these justices. Adopt a justice. Yeah. Essentially is what was going on.
Right. Come to Napa and do a Federalist Society talk, which already rough, but then, fly to Alaska afterward and go salmon fishing with, a major donor to Leonard Leo's enterprises. And, there's this sort of circle to this. There is I think synergy is what George Conway called it, but I will never use that word because I hate that word. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. And the key thing is keep
it serves
Thomas on the
everybody
bench.
at this in the situation. Like Leonard Leo gets credit from both ends of that transaction. He gets it from the donor and he gets it from the justice. So his power increases. The justice, gets what they want in terms of like the trips and the house and the private school education and all this. And the donor has access to a judge. That's something that, is billions of dollars turns out can buy, but it's, and also has an agenda at times that probably gets paid off, but you got a couple of $1 billion at that point. It's just like, I pal around with a Supreme Court justice. I mean, it's so twisted and problematic.
Oh God. Yeah. On so many different levels. I mean, even personally, if you told me a year ago that we would have a conversation about gross influence peddling at the Supreme Court and the influence being peddled is to the justices themselves, I think I, like a lot of people, still believe, no, the Supreme Court is above that. They are on their own little Mount Olympus, even though obviously we have Abe Fortas in the past, Stephen Douglas in the past. This isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened, but the degree to which it happens and has happened is just striking to me. And again, even all year as we did our stories about at ProPublica about Thomas and Harlan Crow and Alito and Paul Singer, all of these lurid details, $1,000 bottles of wine, there was someone missing. We knew that there was a piece missing. It was like a portrait on the wall and one person's silhouette is sort of cut out. And we figured out that that is Leonard Leo. And it just clicked into place for me. And I hope for people who read this or listen to the podcast, it clicks into place for them too.
All right. People should go and listen to the podcast and read the piece to get an understanding of this, because there's so much to be learned about it in terms of like this dynamic. But what it seems to me, the only thing that can be done, to the extent that anything can be done about this, is really the ethics reform that, has been stalled, it seems, in the Senate because they put out that PR document yesterday that turned out to be really nothing more than a PR document. But I'm looking at like Cory Booker and I'm looking at Durbin and I'm looking at these guys and what they're saying now, like, we need to check this out. I mean, people need to push back on this and say this document does nothing.
They absolutely need to push back. If you care about this issue at all, if you've followed it at all, you absolutely have to make your voice heard. And really, I think you got to put some heat on the Democrats here. I mean, I was on the Hill yesterday talking to all of these people that you just mentioned and more. Durbin, Cory Booker, Sheldon Whitehouse, who's obviously very vocal and very active on this. There are subpoenas still under consideration in the Senate Judicial Committee for Leonard Leo and for Harlan Crow. If those subpoenas were to actually go through and to be, actually authorized and out there, they would turn up a lot of information, a lot of things that we do not know, despite all that we have learned this year. But right now, it is unclear if the Democrats will go forward with it. They are getting cold feet. That is what I was told over and over on the Hill yesterday. Various senators, for various reasons, are starting to think, oh, well, the code looks good, and maybe we'll sort of, bring the Supreme Court ethics recusal transparency bill to the floor for a vote, and then we'll say we did our work here. But that can't be the end. That is not actual transparency and accountability. So people got to be loud. Just look up who the Democrats are in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
We're going to do that, and we're going to post their names on the podcast and YouTube description and their phone numbers, and people can very easily call.
Those are the people that the senator, that you need to contact for sure right now.
Andy Kroll, we'll put a link also to your piece and the podcast on Leonard Leo. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.